The first time Daniel Carter stepped through the rusted iron gates of the Ashford estate, he wasn't thinking about romance, second chances, or proving anyone wrong. He was thinking about overdue bills, his 8-year-old daughter Emma, and the promise he had made to her that morning. "I'll be home before dinner," he'd said with a smile, hiding the worry behind tired eyes. Since losing his wife 3 years earlier, every decision he made revolved around giving Emma the stable life she deserved. Daniel wasn't a famous engineer or a wealthy businessman. He was simply a gifted restoration mechanic who had spent nearly 20 years repairing antique machines that most people considered beyond saving. His small workshop had earned a quiet reputation among collectors because he believed every broken machine had a story worth preserving. When Ashford Estate called about a 90-year-old Wurlitzer jukebox that no specialist had been able to repair, Daniel almost refused. The payment sounded generous, but the estate was nearly 4 hours away, and it meant losing 2 days of work. Still, the money would cover Emma's school tuition, so he packed his toolbox before sunrise and made the drive. The mansion looked like something from an old movie, with marble staircases, crystal chandeliers, and priceless paintings covering every wall. Daniel felt slightly out of place in his faded work shirt, worn boots, and grease-stained jeans, but he ignored the curious looks from the staff. Standing beside the silent jukebox was Olivia Hart, the company's confident CEO and the woman overseeing the estate's renovation project. She carried herself with effortless authority, dressed in an elegant navy dress that contrasted sharply with Daniel's rugged appearance. She looked him up and down, noticing the dirt on his sleeves before raising one amused eyebrow. "So," she said with a playful smile that made everyone nearby stop and listen, "they've sent one last miracle worker." Daniel nodded politely. "I'll do my best." Olivia laughed lightly and folded her arms. "If you actually fix this impossible machine," she teased, "I'll kiss you." A few employees chuckled, assuming the challenge was harmless. Daniel simply smiled, set his weathered toolbox on the floor, and quietly replied, "I didn't come here for a kiss, ma'am." Then he knelt before the forgotten jukebox, unaware that what he was about to discover inside would change far more than a broken machine. Daniel placed his toolbox beside the antique jukebox and ran his fingertips gently across its polished wooden cabinet. Unlike the technicians before him, he didn't reach for a screwdriver right away. Years of restoring vintage machines had taught him that every old mechanism spoke its own language. If you rushed it, you usually made things worse. The room gradually grew quiet. A few employees lingered nearby, whispering among themselves, expecting him to fail like everyone else. Olivia remained standing with folded arms, watching more out of curiosity than confidence. "Need anything?" she asked after a few minutes. Daniel smiled without looking up. "Just a little patience." He examined the selection buttons, listened as he pressed each one, and noticed that the locking mechanism made a faint metallic click that didn't match the rest of the machine. Someone had repaired it decades earlier using a part that wasn't original. "That's interesting," he murmured. He crouched lower and shined his flashlight beneath the cabinet. Hidden behind an ornate brass trim was a tiny keyhole, almost invisible beneath years of dust and polish. "Has anyone ever opened this with the original key?" Daniel asked. Olivia frowned. "Not that I know of. We searched everywhere years ago." Daniel checked every corner of the cabinet before carefully feeling underneath the wooden base. His fingers brushed against something rough, a strip of old tape. He peeled it back slowly, revealing a small brass key wrapped in faded cloth. Several people stepped closer. "No way," someone whispered. Daniel inserted the key carefully and turned it just enough to avoid damaging the aging lock. A soft click echoed through the ballroom. The jukebox hummed to life. Golden lights flickered behind the curved glass, and after years of silence, a warm jazz melody filled the room. The employees stared in disbelief, while Olivia instinctively covered her mouth. But Daniel noticed something else. A narrow compartment inside the cabinet had quietly opened. Resting inside was a sealed envelope, untouched by time. Across the front, written in elegant handwriting, were the words, "For my granddaughter, Olivia, when the music plays again. The smile on Olivia's face faded into stunned silence. With slightly trembling hands, she reached for the envelope, realizing that repairing the jukebox had uncovered something far more valuable than anyone had imagined. Olivia carefully broke the seal, unfolding the fragile letter with the same hands that had confidently signed million-dollar contracts only hours earlier. The paper had yellowed with age, but her grandfather's handwriting was unmistakable. My dear Olivia, if you're reading this, someone cared enough to bring this old jukebox back to life. Remember this: people who repair what others throw away often have the greatest hearts. Never judge a person by their clothes, title, or bank account. Character is revealed through patience, honesty, and service. The room was so quiet that the gentle music from the jukebox seemed louder than before. Olivia lowered the letter and looked across the room at Daniel. He wasn't watching her reaction. Instead, he was tightening one last screw on the back panel, making sure the machine would keep working. He hadn't asked what was inside the hidden compartment or tried to draw attention to himself. "You knew there might be something hidden?" she asked softly. Daniel shook his head. "No. I only knew someone had taken the time to hide the key. Old machines usually have a reason for every unusual detail." One of the executives laughed awkwardly. "Well, Daniel, looks like you earned that kiss." A few people smiled, waiting for Olivia's response. Daniel stood, wiped the grease from his hands with an old cloth, and closed his toolbox. "I think your grandfather already gave me something better," he said. The satisfaction of seeing his gift reach the right person. His answer caught everyone off guard. For the first time that day, Olivia felt embarrassed. Not because of the playful promise she had made, but because she had judged him before he had spoken more than a few words. She had seen a man in worn clothes and assumed he was ordinary. Yet the person standing before her carried a quiet confidence that no expensive suit could buy. As Daniel prepared to leave, his phone buzzed. A photo of his young daughter appeared on the screen with a simple message from the babysitter. "She finished her school project and keeps asking when Dad is coming home." Daniel smiled warmly. "That's my cue," he said. Watching him walk toward the exit, Olivia realized the most remarkable thing about him wasn't that he had repaired an impossible machine. It was that, despite his skill and the admiration in the room, the person he couldn't wait to get back to was his daughter. In that moment, her respect for him became something genuine, built not on a joke or a challenge, but on the kind of character her grandfather had hoped she would one day recognize. Daniel thanked the staff, accepted his payment, and carried his toolbox toward the front entrance. He expected the day to end like every other repair job, with a handshake, a receipt, and a long drive home. As he reached his truck, he heard footsteps behind him. "Daniel, wait!" He turned to see Olivia hurrying across the driveway, still holding her grandfather's letter. Gone was the confident smile she had worn earlier. She looked thoughtful, almost uncertain. "I owe you an apology," she said. "When you arrived, I judged you before I knew anything about you. I turned your work into a joke, and that wasn't fair." Daniel gave a small shrug. "It happens more often than you'd think. I've learned not to take it personally." She smiled faintly. "My grandfather spent his whole life telling me that good leaders respect every person who walks through the door. Somewhere along the way, I became so focused on results that I forgot that lesson." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The afternoon breeze carried the faint sound of the jukebox playing inside the mansion. Olivia looked at him and laughed softly. "So, about what I said earlier." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "The kiss?" She nodded, slightly embarrassed. "You noticed. I'd have to be deaf not to." They both laughed, breaking the awkwardness. "I've changed my mind," Olivia admitted. "Not because you fixed the jukebox, but because you've reminded me of the kind of person I want to become." Daniel smiled kindly. "I appreciate that, but respect means more to me than keeping a playful promise." He glanced at the photo of his daughter taped inside his truck. "My little girl is waiting for me. She'd be disappointed if I were late." Olivia noticed the picture and understood immediately. His greatest priority had never been impressing anyone at the estate. It had always been getting home to the person who depended on him most. Before he climbed into the truck, she extended her hand. "Friends?" Daniel shook it firmly.
Friends?
Months later, Olivia invited Daniel to restore several other antique pieces at the estate, not because she felt she owed him anything, but because she trusted his skill and respected his integrity. She also started making time to know the people who worked for her, learning their names, listening to their ideas, and treating every role with equal dignity. As for Daniel, he returned each evening to the small home where his daughter greeted him with a hug that meant more than any reward money or public praise. The old jukebox became a favorite story between them, not because of the teasing challenge, but because it reminded them both that genuine worth is revealed through humility, patience, and kindness. Moral lesson: true character is measured not by status, wealth, or appearances, but by humility, integrity, and the way we treat others with respect.